this panel actually is titled Measure to Survive. So we're bringing the dramatics in. So let's see who will survive this panel of measurement. Joining me on stage is going to be Rana Burden. Rana, come on up. Rana's going to give us an overview of the brief, and then we're going to discuss it with these great gentlemen. Julien, our social dynamite. Ben Morsum of Debut Group. And for the first time on the stage today from Schneider Electric, Bjorn. All right, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing with all of us. Raina, let's start with you. Can you give us sort of the broad outcomes before we go through the four individual areas? We want to kind of get an overview.
Okay, I'm surviving, first thing, after the measure to survive.
Sure, Rana.
We had 12 groups to talk about how to measure all kind of events. Mm-hmm. It wasn't easy. It wasn't too long to stimulate everything.
Nor do we have a long time sometimes when it comes to events.
Exactly.
And last minute changes, so this crowd can think on their feet.
I should admit that I couldn't take all the, reflection from all the groups, but as far as I understand the emotional, and the spirit mm-hmm. of the workshop participant, I think what I felt after all, the sessions helped me a lot in terms of saving us for not making huge mistakes, because it's mm-hmm. always good to know and to reflect and not to repeat our, already reached level of measurement. Mm-hmm. There is always a room for improvement, so that we can learn from each other. And the other thing that I got from this session, that the technology companies mm-hmm. are already in this, business, mm-hmm. and they are really good in it. But maybe we may have it. There is a lack of human touch in the sense of the measurement, so that the other companies have more say to do the human touch, but less measurement indicators. This is what I felt. Mm-hmm. So these are the issues that I would like to open the discussion, that I won't intervene probably. And the other things that I learned from that session, that the expectation management. Mm. So we have to enter the session, we have to organize our events. First, what to expect. So are we leading, or are we targeting the satisfaction or connecting people, or to chasing the business? So these are very important in terms of starting what to measure and how to measure. So I think this is all I want to say for the beginning, so that I'll give the floor to experts, which I'm not. I'm also here to learn from all these experts and from international audience.
Well, to do that, why don't we go ahead and have Magency put up the first objective, and we'll sort of go through these very similar to how you did in the debrief, or in the brief as we debrief here. But that is something definitely that Julien, you were discussing with me as we wait for that up on the screen, about how data measurement is really going to change the course of events. So we want to make sure to build that in. We're going to start with measuring during employee events, such as conventions, evening events, team building, training events, and incentives. Now, it looks like, Rana, do you want to talk us through the top vote getter was the focus on sales incentive to change behavior? Do you feel that sales incentives really change that behavior and motivate, or incentives a thing of the past?
That was not my group, but I think all this, for the last 2 years that I'm, following the salesperson that for the company that I'm heading, I think the change behavior should be definitely, measured. Why? Because they're changing so fast. So continuously, we need to measure depending on the new products, depending on the political circumstances, because depending on the economical circumstances. It's not easy, but it should be done if we want to increase our sales.
Well, and Julian, you're looking at, with this, it's employee events, so it's internal. How do you kind of measure that behavior?
Actually, I have to say I have problem with sales incentive. I think it's nonsense. I think sales incentive does not work. I think that if you want to change behavior and the culture of your company, you should more focus on how to leverage employability of your employee and create value for them in order for them to create value for you. And not focus on how they can create value for you, but focus on how you can create value for them first. So my way to deal, I was not in the group, it's not a collective reflection, it's only my view.
Yeah.
So my tweet engaged me, only me. I would say that it is quite interesting to see some organization investing in employability through H2H communication. I'm sorry, I'm a bit always in the same field. Saying we can change our employee and train them to become influencers. By helping them to have digital ID card. As of today, when you have a meeting, you still have only one chance to have a good first impression, but it's on Google. It's not face-to-face. When you come to the meeting, it's too late. You have been Googleized well before. So where is your digital ID card? What is the first answer of Google when you have your name? And if you help all your employees to have the right LinkedIn account or Twitter or whatever, the tools they will use to have their digital ID for their own brand, you give that to them with altruism, some kind of, but at the end you will have payback. Because if they are influencers, they will talk about their jobs, they will talk about their company, they will probably be there during the convention, saying and tweeting or retweeting, yes, we are building the best strategy ever for tomorrow. And because they have influencers, they will have audiences. So my best advice for internal communication will be to care of employee, to create value for them for their future. They will give it to you.
Is that monetary?
Yes, at the end, it's,
Is it by promoting a title change, or is it actual money? Is it location?
No, it is more education. So education, sometimes it's just really simple things. Yep. You create just a photo booth, and we will make a real nice professional photo of you for your digital picture.
Yep.
And that's just a change of the image of the whole company that will have nice picture. We all have, some of us have wedding picture for our LinkedIn profile. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
This is not a professional picture. And this is part of the first impression you made on your digital ID card when you're Googleized. So I'm sorry, I go a bit far.
No, I'd like to go just one step farther. Digital ID cards are absolutely, I speak with people all the time. I'm like, don't post personalized items on your Facebook page if that's what you're giving. I mean, because if it's out there, it's out there. So somebody looking at you for a new job or a promotion, they're going to see it. So you've got to be careful of what's out there. You mentioned digital ID card. I think that's a nice way to look at it, whether it's your Twitter profile, LinkedIn, Google, plus Instagram, Facebook. It's all your digital ID. What would you say, Julian, then, are the top 3 ingredients for digital ID outside of a great professional picture? What are the top 3 ingredients everyone in here should have in their digital ID online? Top 3.
I would say, first, being in the shoes of your audience. Don't talk about yourself, I am the director of, but I help people. So always the description should be always focused on the readers, not on yourself. And not on HR issue, I want to be hired, but just on what I give to my audience on a day-to-day basis. So I help people improve their events, whatever it is. And that's maybe within this one that you will find the other different aspects. And the last one will be, if you have time, if it is in your objectives also to improve it, you have to talk a little bit on social media, and you become a spokesperson of your own feelings, with more prospective oriented on your markets than on your product. So be interesting, not interested.
And do you think you should be interesting through video, through audio, through written content? Does one have more value in measurement than another when it comes to video or verbal versus written?
Of course, it depends of the cost that in time that you want to invest in.
Let's say you've got any budget. If I go,
Yes.
but if I go on, let's say my Facebook this morning, I did a video to get everybody excited before we
Yeah.
open the doors. What's better for content? What do more people read? Is it verbal or is it written?
The
'Cause
more efficient
iPhones
way
cost
is
nothing.
to do everything. You do a video, you transform it into a written article, you make some little post and an infography at the end, then you
Okay.
share, and you use the different lives of this content. With one content, you can have
Yeah.
several
But
lives.
does one measure high, like if everybody here in the audience can tell their top manager to take 5 minutes for one thing when it comes to an event, and they can either tell their top manager, I'd love to record a video with you for 2 minutes
Yep.
to place on the site, or I'd like to write an article, you can edit it for 5 minutes, and we're going to put it up on the site. Which one measures higher with your background?
Depending of your objective. If you need awareness, video has more view today.
Okay.
If you want leads, you need to be able to track the traffic and to create traffic to your website. So article will create traffic to your website and you will track leads.
Awesome.
So a lot of, in every case, we were discussing about trade show in the group. The KPI and the advice are different between your objective. If my objective is awareness, I will have different things and KPIs. If my objective is closing deals, my KPI will be meetings on my booth. It will not be the same.
Good. That's great, because we've got, when you have that limited amount of time with people, you got to choose the right thing for them to do. So, Ben, when it comes to employee events, and you're measuring neuroscience, is it different when you have employees with an event? Not external, but internal.
Right.
How do you measure that differently?
First of all, sales incentives, I have my own opinions about, because again, there's this formulaic design with what we do in this industry. Sales incentives can be wonderful, but I think, there's a disconnect typically with most organizations with the sales incentive and what you actually hope to achieve in moving an employee to where you want to get them to be more improved in the job that they're doing. And the KPIs typically are disconnected because they cannot do both. So there's a little bit of a challenge there. So for us, it's really about looking at what you want to achieve with a sales incentive ultimately, and it's a reward for a job well done. If you just boil it down to that, for reaching, sales targets and things of that nature. And then but for us it would be to reverse engineer that, and you can actually go a lot farther with reward if the reward is fragmented out versus this conclusion at the end. And when you do that, you can apply more measurement process, or again, as I say, the spectrum of measurement leading up to the sales incentive along the way. And so what you're seeing now with a lot of like this machine learning platform that we are currently working with, and I've mentioned to a few in partnership with Harvard, is actually adding what we call a flow, which is cumulative reward over time. And that psychologically, better performance comes out of that versus having an end result. So it's really about reverse engineering from what you hope to achieve by offering a sales incentive, and then building that plan along the way with micro measurement and micro reward to get you there. Disrupting these traditional models.
No, that segmented effect, I can see how that could really carry an employee further to the goal and gain more along the way. That's very original.
And just to add, like in the form of measurement, you get, if anybody has completed or participated in a survey where you get rewarded at the end, just to put it in perspective, you will just go through it and do just enough to get through it to reach that reward. The same psychology is true when it comes to sales incentives, believe it or not, and we've studied that. So is that driving the best performance out of your employees if they're just trying to qualify for that said sales incentive. Something to think about.
That is a great analogy. I've plunked through those quizzes for a coupon at the end.
Yes.
Björn, you've been in many different leadership positions. Something that we're seeing a lot with these are about belonging, identification and belonging, as far as like measuring employee events. Do you find that that's true within the teams that you lead? Is belonging a very important factor?
Okay, so it works, okay. I mean, Ben didn't put his hand here on his head. He put the hand on the heart, right? And honestly, like, if I can just erase like employee event or public event or partner event, to me, there are more commonalities than differences. And so when you run an employee event, I think, of course, you want people to buy into your vision, or then decide that they're not buying into the vision, and then they would probably leave the company, right? That's the other option. But you want them to make that decision, and make that emotional decision that I am a part of this tribe, I want to be part of this journey. And so that, of course, the emotional engagement is one thing that we absolutely want to measure. But I think the most important thing with the employee events is that I'm very allergic to the one-off events. So, okay, so let's do this kind of evening where we get together and we have a little bit of fun. We say the Christmas parties or the spring parties or the summer parties that we have, you know, at least in some of my markets that I've been working in. Those are usually just arranged for the sake of just arranging them. But honestly, we should measure those the same way as we measure, you know, regularly employee satisfaction. I mean, in every big corporation that we represent, I'm sure that you guys also have employee surveys. Never run an event without mapping that event to the questions that you also ask in the employee service. Be more systematic about how you approach your internal event, whether it is an evening party or whether it is an educational event, whether it's a strategy session, whether it's a video cast. It should all be sort of in that context. And so, but I do say that the commonalities between external and internal events are larger than the differences. And when I do events, I only measure three things. You know, at least like in common for internal events, it's what people learn from this event that will make them change behavior. And you will hear me say that if you ask for a public event as well, it's the same answer. Then we'll ask, how has their attitude towards your company changed thanks to the participation at this event? And that you can ask even if it's a summer party or if it's a strategy session, you can still ask that question. And then also, how did you find new friends in the company? Did you improve your relationship with people within your company? And you can ask that, and those are universal. You can always ask these questions, you can always survey them. And then the method on how you survey or the format of the event, it's actually secondary.
Björn, that's fantastic. I think we'll all use that 3-point measurement after this. Let's go ahead and put up the other objective with Magency. And that's going to be measures for exhibitors during trade shows and public exhibitions. Oftentimes they're funding the conference. We got to make sure that they're happy. Let's just go right back to you, Ben. You showed some neuroscience examples in your presentation. How do you look at measuring exhibitors differently than the attendees?
So are you talking about measuring attendee experience?
I think the exhibitors experience, correct, Rana?
Just to clarify, because there's a big sort of difference with that.
Rana, this is more towards how do you measure the exhibitors experience?
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
It's such as, like, for example, somebody talked about engagement. Perhaps you measure the exhibitor's satisfaction with time spent at the booth.
Right. And again, you know, if there's one key point, it's multifaceted measurement. There's no one, you know, be all and end all that will actually achieve what you hope to achieve. So it's always working backwards, as I say, from what insights will actually help you contribute and continue and evolve the experiences that you're doing. Time in exhibit booths is about human interaction, right? So measuring time spent, there's a lot of different variables. And we were talking about this in our measurement session at some extent, that, you know, can you get pulse checks? It really has to be about putting together a plan for pulse checks. I mentioned when we were talking in our session earlier, the same challenge exists with capturing insights from executives or vice presidents. You know, there's this, people don't want to be bothered more than they have to be bothered. So we would introduce things like a measurement concierge that actually is targeted with maybe one question that they can go and be part of the experience. So again, measurements embedded into the experience. It's not just about hitting how did you like our exhibit. It's because that provides some good insight, but we always want to try to get a little bit deeper. So if you can design some psychologically designed questions that are easy from somebody welcoming to say, you know, I've noticed you've been here for 10 minutes. Can you tell us, you know, how your experience has been, or what you've been most focused on. Very direct questions, and you're going to get more qualitative insight from those exhibit experiences.
Well, Bjorn, from, you know, Nokia in your background, Microsoft, now Schneider, you know, how do you make sure the exhibitors at your events know their value is being measured and to use that for the future? How do you measure for the exhibitors?
As an exhibitor or as a trade show, okay, so, I mean, obviously lead generation is so important here. And to be able to do that and to generate credible and real leads, whether that is through meeting management, good meeting management to make sure that we get to the right attendees and make sure that we match-make them with the right executives at our end. That we can use our sales force very much to do, and that is a hugely important thing. And then, of course, measuring the impact of that. And then, of course, the booth footfall. So all the technologies with, you know, badge scanning and then documenting what this, and rating the customer that just visited your booth and to generate that lead, that's so important. And then the follow-up. I think Bob talked very well about it this morning, about how he actually manages to accelerate the funnel or the pipeline and also to identify new leads and greenfield leads. So that's another thing that we work a lot with. And then I think also that the second part that we do, which probably is, whenever you do an event, and this is also what I think Bob said a little bit, like that is sort of the place where people focus that it's going to come, it's going to happen. And so when you can actually use that as the anchor point for doing a lot of the online and the social media that you work with, why not coincide, you know, your trade show with a social media campaign to go to create interest, and then of course as a part of that generate content that can be used online as well from the trade show. That works really well, and it helps to sort of boost the return on investment, if you could measure it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And there was Joanne had remarked just on the last screen, having sort of like that three-point touch. You get them to the booth, you show them a presentation, and then you take it to the next like demo reel. It really is a multiple touch point. Let's move on to branding. I'm sorry. I thought we were on, yes, brand awareness. Measures for exhibitors during trade show, public exhibitions. Obviously, I would think metrics, Julian, has a lot to do with this. When you see their brand
actually, and that's exactly in our groups also we discuss about all the exhibitor ROI and management of value. Of course, there are different KPIs depending on the objective and the stages of sales cycle. Of course, we all agree that trade show is for sales at the end. So sometimes your brand is not well known, so you have awareness objective. It's probably not the case of Microsoft in a lot of trade shows, but sometimes you need this awareness. And when you are in the awareness era, there are probably more use of social media, of course. I was mentioning the TV show that you can create on your booth to trust the digital audiences. But sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes your audience is not that digital. So we were exchanging also in the groups about how we can touch brains. Because at the end, awareness is just about touching brains. As of today, and I hope for a long time, we cannot measure that. I hope we will not be able to measure that because spying our brain is not a good news. But we said we can use a lot of different ways to create brain touch points. Of course, it is important to rely also on regular press coverage, to be well present in the press room, maybe create a press visit of the booth, maybe create special activities on the booth to help this intermediary of audience to come in. Maybe create retention and memories with goodies, with play games, or anything, and we were focused only on awareness, so brain touch points. Meaning that in this discussion we said, our objective is not lead generation. It is not this one. It is awareness. So our first objective is not to scan badges. It's just to help our brand to be more visible.
Yep, and we see brand awareness was up there about 4 times, and brand quality, which we oftentimes, if we're more aware of it, we think it has a higher quality. It's interesting how you use games. You know,
Yep.
10 years ago, we weren't having gamifications at exhibitor booths, and now it's quite a
Can I talk about
central point.
the shot game? Where is our
Yeah.
group's representative? So they were explaining, now I will not say the name, that for some booths they have a game with shots. So and you-
I like this game. How many of you have used gamification in exhibitors' booths to bring people over and incentivize? And how many of you think it worked?
I think it depends. Huh? Be careful of gamification because sometimes
Please.
it's like corruption. Be careful with that. Huh? We
Yeah.
see a lot of different companies that are using gamification, even for employees, that is really near corruption. And at some point, people will just qualify, as you say, for the incentive. I just do the limit job because, okay, they are paying me to do so, okay, I do that. And this is, gamification can be a nice incentive and motivation way. You just have to be careful the way you use it.
Bjorn, how about you with brand?
Yeah, absolutely, gamification works, but it works. I think you need to know who you're targeting, and it only works for some target groups. So, for instance, my experience from Nokia, for instance, we used gamification 10 years ago with near-field communication technology. So people came in and they basically used their badge and then they tagged and then they got a score. And if they got a high score enough, they could win a phone, right? That you didn't get the CEOs of companies to do that, but you got the developers coming to do it. So it was really developer focused. And so we really wanted the grassroots developers to come and understand what our tools were for our mobile development platform. So that worked. That worked really well. And so, but you have to know your target group. You have to see. Use it as a part of the toolbox, but don't use it by default because it doesn't always work, depending on the audience. That's just my advice.
Well, it's interesting how this evolved because we were just talking about brands, but gamification completely goes to engagement. What about the dynamic of the people or exhibitors on their booth? How do you, Rana, have you prepared exhibitors or yourself to really involve the people coming by and maybe be more welcoming? Is there something that you suggest to them so that they really, sometimes people aren't that dynamic in the booth, but how can you create that? Or go ahead.
I could
then
say
and we'll come
something.
back to you, Rana.
Actually, it's also depending which sector you are active. So my company is active total 2 different, sector. One is the construction materials, which you can, have a more to exhibitors, but the other area is the aerospace and defense industry. So it just this
Very
is
different.
total different and total different, discourses that you have to engage or even not to engage for aerospace and defense industry. This is not targeting your customer. But when it comes to the dynamic of the exhibitors and so on, it's not only while I'm organizing events, but also while I'm, preparing the communication strategies. I always look the 360%, the communication and events
Full
management.
circle.
So, for example, here Turkey, this year, my company is coming from the Gallipoli to Çanakkale. Maybe you heard about that, where the Troy born and where is the Troy horse in that. And this year, the UNESCO's, and we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Troy, when that the UNESCO declared as the cultural heritage. So whatever I do in terms of the events and so on, I do use this as a team in terms of the exhibition, that Troy, so that I'm also kind of, forcing or supporting the whole, the Troy year 2018. Also supporting my, companies, like as a brand or as a ceramic tile, we do have a Troy series. We will going to the exhibition to Italy with this Troy, products. And I'm also organizing some ceramic arts, exhibition where
great.
I'm doing in Gallipoli as well as in Istanbul with Troy teams, and also to celebrate our organizing our sports events under the theme of Troy. So that gives and that gives more impact. That gives you more awareness, brand awareness, and using one team in other the different aspects. And for the exhibition itself, I think it will work, and we'll see, and then I will see, and I'll let you know after my exhibition will be ended by the end of September.
It takes a certain eye to really see that, to hone in on it, and then see how you can translate it to different sections. That's going to be brilliant. Congratulations. Anyone else want to add on engagement for the exhibitors in booth?
Yeah, and just not knowing fully the context of the question, I just wanted to add that, just like there's so much hidden talent hiding amongst event planners and really what they can do to contribute to measurement, just to take it back to measurement for a moment, we've been working with clients that have these exhibit obligations and don't realize that the people that are interacting with attendees at exhibit booths can also be hijacked slightly as measurement, for the sake of measurement. And what we'll do is just coach them and train them so that they actually are, as much as they're interacting and selling on behalf of the client, they are also secretly capturing insights and data that can really be valuable, and it's not obstructing the flow of outcome from this environment. So it's a resource that's already there. I know I mentioned the concierge. That's when it has to be much more targeted and where you want to go deeper, but it's amazing what you can do with the people you already have, and it costs you nothing more other than some education.
Very well said, Ben. And to wrap it up, we're looking at the measures for B2C events. Product launches, customer events, temporary shops, pop-up parks. What's the best way to measure B2C? Is it talking to C, talking to B? Tell me.
It says with built-in measurement capabilities, it seems like.
Well, they could be. Well, do you use engagement tools with built-in measurement? How would that look?
Yeah, and we talked about gamification. I kind of like to look at it from a different perspective, as into incentivification, because we're already embracing apps. We use apps for day-to-day functionality during live events, and it's a really great opportunity to infuse capture. And sometimes during an event, when there's going to be a poll, again, we're all about hiding the measurement as best as possible and sort of hacking into moments when an audience doesn't expect it. You capture your best measurement when people are not expecting to be measured, such as, we're doing a poll, here's a question, they're already engaged, we have them completely focused, and then boom, we've just slipped in a, how do you feel about this particular content? Yes, like hot or not. That simple. But we then run it on a machine learning platform that can qualify and extract the higher quality data, know if somebody's gaming the system or just not engaged, for example. And then so we've embedded it in there. And that's a tool we already have available and can be integrated. The other things that I talk about is more when we get into emotional feedback. We can capture some pretty good emotional data just with the apps, believe it or not, but then we take it to wearables.
Thank you very much. I think it's interesting to put the emotion into measurement, as we'd like to do through all of these 4 platforms. Thank you all for joining us on stage. We're going to hear from Björn a little bit later as well. Rana, Julian, Ben, thank you to the panel.